All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the HPAC Ambassador Research Panel. We're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's panel. We are going from 6 to 7 o'clock. So I want to go ahead and just remind you of a couple things. First of all, I'm going to introduce our panelists. Feel free to turn on your cameras if you would like. That makes it a little bit more engaging. If you'd like to do that, it's totally fine. But feel free to keep yourself muted unless you want to ask a question or engage with some of our panelists. That's totally fine as well. But if you're not speaking, mute yourself. That way we don't have any feedback noise. So I'm going to go ahead and get starting with introducing our panelists this evening. So our panelists are all four HPAC ambassadors. We have Audrey, Tony, Summer, and Nicholas. And so they are ambassadors for our office this year. We have 16 HPAC ambassadors, and our four ambassadors this evening are going to talk a little bit about research opportunities that exist across a wide spectrum, that being at UCR, outside of UCR, and opportunities that they have that they've participated in. So I'm going to go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves, what year they are, their major, and if you want to mention maybe one research opportunity that you've participated in. And as we go through the panel, then we'll continue to talk about subsequent opportunities that you may have. So Audrey, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, my name's Audrey. I'm a third-year biology major, and I did dynamic genome, which I got my research later from. I asked my faculty mentor to be an undergraduate research assistant for her.
Great, thanks Audrey. Nick?
Hello, my name is Nick. I'm a fourth-year CMDB major. I currently work in a Dr. LaRoque's lab, and I do some undergraduate research there on malaria.
Great. Summer?
Hi, my name's Summer. I'm a third-year biochem major, and I'm also a transfer student. And I got started in research through the RISE program last summer from transferring, and I work in Dr. Larson's lab in the Department of Biochemistry.
And Tony?
Hey everyone, my name is Tony. Currently, I'm in my last quarter at UCR, neuroscience major. And so throughout college, I've been in 3 different labs, 2 my first year. But then I've been in 1 research lab for the past 2 years, and I stayed with that one. And then we can talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation.
Great. So again, thank you all for your time tonight. Let's kind of go through the next stages of just setting the foundation of what we're going to talk about. And I think the first part of that is defining what research is. So who wants to talk a little bit about what research looks like in terms of your experience and just defining that term?
So research to me was getting able to help, because especially as an undergraduate, it's kind of hard for you to kind of establish your own research project without any prior experience. So research to me was assisting a faculty member in their already pre-established research and getting my foot in the door of experiencing, the bioinformatic techniques and kind of understanding what research, what was required of research, and what I liked about it and what I didn't like.
Others?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Tony.
You go ahead, Summer.
Okay. As a transfer student, research is an opportunity that you really only have at a big university, and it's something you should definitely take advantage of. And it's the opportunity to work with graduate students and get a lot of professional development, as well as learn about using the scientific method and networking with a PI, and it's a really good opportunity.
Thanks somewhere. Tony?
And, yeah, just real quick, I just wanted to add, research definitely looks different based on the type of research and the PI that you're under. So I was in a psych lab, and they did like eye tracking studies in children, and the majority of my work was like computer coding, and I hated that. I mean, it was an awesome research, but the stuff that I was doing was not enjoyable at all. So when I went into my other lab, this is more of a wet lab where we do like procedures on mice, and very more hands-on, very more biological. That was a lot more enjoyable. And so I know a lot of people with some PIs that really only let them like wash glass until they've been in the lab for like 3 months. And then there's other PIs where they'll just throw you on a project just because of the way their lab works. So the type of PI will definitely change your experience of research.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to what Tony said there, because I definitely agree with that. Because the first lab I worked in did research on fish. And for most of the time that I was there, a lot of it was maintaining like fish tanks, keeping the fish clear, a lot of like cataloging. And when I moved on to the lab I'm currently in, I was able to use more of the like the wet lab techniques, like using pipettes, centrifuges, things like that. So, as Tony said, those different labs that you get, they have all sorts of different experiences, and like the different PIs that you work with, they'll give you different jobs depending on what lab you're working in.
Great. And Tony sort of hinted at this, the being in a psych lab and doing some coding. A lot of people think that research only happens in a bench lab environment, a wet lab. So can you maybe talk a little bit about just research that happens in other disciplines?
Yeah, I don't have too much knowledge on like history research or like other type of like CHAS type research, but in psychology, what we did is there was a good majority of work just recruiting people, because a lot of psych studies have to be done on humans, obviously. So it's really difficult to get those humans because a lot of them are just unmotivated. Um, so that's a pretty big majority of the work. Then when you actually have them, you get to do like a little bit of like personable work. So that was definitely fun. But then afterwards, the vast majority of my time was coding the videos, and it's like a very nitpicky process. It has to be perfect. There were a lot of times where I was alone in the lab until like 10 p.m. Just working on my computer, back aching, neck aching. And a lot of people like that though. A lot of people like the being solitary and doing things like that. I left for other reasons besides just the solitariness, but it was definitely not what I wanted to do as a researcher. Then there's other types of research where even in wet labs, it's called the literature review, where you compile the existing literature on a specific topic. Most of the time, it's written by individuals who have like expert knowledge on the topic. So they compile everything and all of the new and relevant research for like easy learning for posterity. So that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with certain procedures or anything like that. It's really something that anyone can do, but it's very difficult and time consuming. But those are all types of research.
I don't know if anybody has anything else to add just regarding research and other disciplines. I think Tony did a really good job talking a little bit about that. I would just say additionally that, or in addition, that UCR and the University of California is a research focused institution. So Tony mentioned like English and history. Every discipline at UCR, there is an opportunity or a possibility to do research. In the context of health professions, sometimes students will say, you know, do I have to have like wet lab research, or thinking that's the only type of research that they can do or should be doing to pursue a career in the health professions. But in actuality, it can be in any discipline. So Tony talked a little bit about psychology, and psychology is sort of a good example because a lot of our students that are doing research outside of the natural or bench wet sciences are doing it in psychology. There's a lot of opportunity there. And so we've had a lot of experience with that. But it's really in any discipline. We have students that are doing research in anthropology, like cultural or biological anthropology. So it's really just posing that question, looking at you know, various questions, problems, issues, developing a hypothesis and moving forward. Those are all the exploration of doing research. So if you find something that you're interested in, or there's an opportunity that's available, that's something that you might explore. And in terms of, again, applying it toward the health professions, any type of scientific inquiry or exploration is always a good thing. So I wanted to move us now towards some of the specific engaging pieces that you've had in research areas. So our 4 panelists have all had research experience, and we thought we would start by talking about some of the experiences that exist at UCR. And so I'm going to go ahead and let our panelists feel free to jump in. We can start with dynamic genome, but we'll move through this list here just to talk a little bit about what opportunities exist on our campus.
So I was in dynamic genome. I got put into it. I kind of didn't know dynamic genome going into it. I didn't know what it was for, but my learning community, I don't know if any of freshmen, if you guys are in learning communities, but you have like these block schedules that they give you and you have to like sign up for them and register for them. I was registered for Bio 20, which replaces Biology 5 lab. And I think it has some prereqs. I think you need to be a freshman and you need to have finished chemistry 1A. And basically it depends on who's kind of the lead researcher for that. But I think it's, for me, I had 2 professors, one that would teach us about the central dogma, so DNA, replication, transcription, RNA transcription, or translation. And it was a class about bioinformatics, genomics, and it was a very engaging class in the sense that you could learn about kind of like primers and like DNA extraction on paper. And then later that day, you would perform it yourself with like these cool techniques like polymerase chain reactions, gel electrophoresis, and then your test subjects would vary. Like for me, I had Arabidopsis plants, so we got to plant these mutated seeds. I know another class got to have freeze-dried or frozen spiders, and then you cut it up basically, and you mash it up so you can extract DNA. And I was able to talk to that mentor for the lab and ask if they had any open positions for their own lab. And, you know, I sent my resume over and I got to work for them for a year. So that was really cool. I overall think it was a very good experience because I am the type of person that loves like learning with my hands rather than, you know, sitting and reading textbooks. So yeah.
Great, thanks, Audrey.
So I'll talk a little bit about CAMP. CAMP is definitely an interesting program. Unlike Dynamic Genome, where you have the opportunity to find a PI, principal investigator, CAMP kind of expects you to have a PI already to be part of a lab, and they basically give you grants to conduct research. So not necessarily like a research opportunity, like they won't like get you in and like find you a PI and match you with one, but they'll give you a good amount of money to conduct research. The only aside I have to say about that is that you have to be like a certain minority to qualify, and they're surprisingly very strict on that. So if you match their description, I highly apply. I highly encourage you to apply to camp. It'd be really good.
Does anybody want to talk about Mark U Star?
So Mark U Star is a program that's specifically for people that want to pursue PhDs. They will take you if you're considering an MD PhD, but they're pretty strict about the fact that you have to get a PhD. And the program, they have a lot of financial assistance. They pretty much pay for everything regarding your education and your research. And they have a 10-week summer program, and I think that's for sophomores and juniors. And then the main program is a 2-year program for entering juniors. And they facilitate you on getting ready to apply for your PhD and different things like that. I haven't done it, and I don't personally know anyone that's done it, but my PI had a few students do it, and I've heard really good things about it. But again, PhD is the main thing for that. And then I did RISE. That was how I got introduced to research at UCR. So I'm a transfer student, and I applied in the spring before I transferred. But this program is also open for freshmen if you did the dynamic genome, or if you're in a CNAS learning community, you're able to apply for it in the spring. And the way that it works is they will match you with a PI if you don't already have one, and they train you and help you get ready to do that. And that is how I got connected with my PI, Dr. Paul Larson, in the Department of Biochem. It was a really good program. They paid you $5,000 over the summer for 10 weeks of research.
Great, thank you so much.
CRF is a little bit kind of like RISE, not really. CRF is basically like a super competitive research fellowship opportunity, part of UCR. I'll put in the link for it in case anyone's interested. So kind of like the others, you already need a PI to apply. They need to be in love with you because they need to write you a really good letter of rec that has to be better than everyone else that's applying. You have to go to like workshops, but if you get accepted, it looks really good for graduate school or medical school, whatever you want to do, and they pay you like a pretty hefty stipend. So I wish I applied to this. One of my friends in my lab actually got this, but this year they're doing something different because they don't have as much funds because of COVID. But after spring, I think everything's going to go back to normal. This is also going to go back to normal. So highly encourage everyone to try to get this.
About the undergraduate research portal.
So I personally have a little bit of experience with the undergraduate research portal. That's actually how I found the first lab that I worked. So let me go ahead and send the link here. So this is kind of like a website that has a whole bunch of links to different research opportunities that faculty might have. And then the thing that I find interesting about this is that in addition to having like a little description and like who the faculty are, it lists like the time commitment, kind of like their desired GPA, kind of like some of the skills that they'd like you to have. Like for example, I was taking a look at one of them, and it mentioned that it wanted experience in like coding, and you had to be like a junior to apply. That's kind of like a good starting point to find some of these labs. I will say though that sometimes the opportunities they have listed there are a little bit limited, as opposed to like finding a PI through other methods. But if you're looking for a good starting point, I definitely think the research portal is somewhere to look.
Great. And undergraduate research symposium, following up to the portal.
So symposiums are essentially just big conventions where people come and present their research, and there are so many different types of symposiums. You will see them that are super specific for your type of research or very broad, like multidisciplinary research. So the first symposium I presented at was with RISE at the end of the 10-week program, and I did a oral presentation with a PowerPoint as well as a poster presentation. And it was a really good experience. It makes you really understand what your research is about so that you can answer people's questions. And usually your PI will come and like support you in the audience. And then the other symposium I did was during COVID. It was specifically for plant biochemistry, which is the field that I work in. And it ended up being over Zoom. So it was kind of a weird format and not totally normal. So looking forward, a lot of the symposiums might be on Zoom in the future. But overall, it's a really good opportunity. And something piggybacking off the CRF that Tony spoke about, research takes money. Like it costs money to do the research that you're doing. And sometimes your PI won't always have money to fund the things that you want to do. So if you can find money, your PI will literally fall in love with you. They will love you. And so I'm putting the link for the UCR mini grant, which once you're in a lab, you can apply for that. And it's usually between like $500 and $1,500. And I used that to, a PI is a principal investigator. That's your head person in your lab, the doctor that you're working under. And so the grants are really important, and you can use those to pay for your symposium because usually there's a registration fee, and it costs like $100 to $200 to print your poster paper for the trifold poster board. So it is important to think about the money behind these things.
Great, thanks, Summer. Really, really detailed. Thank you. And just in addition to that, the campus has a spring undergraduate research symposium. It's across the entire university, all disciplines where students come together and they present their scientific work, or if they've done, creative writing or artwork or music. This year it was also remote, and as Summer was talking about them being over Zoom, it kind of reminded me back to April when we had the campus symposium, which just seems like forever ago, April, May. But I took the opportunity in that symposium to actually attend several presentations, and I went through some that were film and dance. So just to kind of get a different experience, I'm usually involved in the sciences. So it allowed me to have an experience and some exposure to see what students are doing across the campus at UCR, which was a really cool event. But the symposium is just a really great opportunity it's a showcase. And as Summer said, it's like a convention where you can go. It's typically held in the hub on the 3rd floor, and you just go in and posters are up and students are presenting their research, faculty are there, other lab peers are there. So it's just a really great way to share your work and also find out about others. So with the undergraduate research portal and the undergraduate research symposium, I believe Nick posted a link, but that's ran through undergraduate education at UCR. And you can go on to our website and understand the various options that you have and opportunities to check that out. So definitely something that you should explore. We'll have a better idea as we move into winter quarter, what it's going to look like for spring. But there is a very good chance that it will be on some type of remote platform, as Summer shared, like Zoom or some other platform. So we'll make sure that we get that information to you. But if you do have ideas, definitely think about that, because we will have some type of presenting opportunity in the spring. All right, let's talk a little bit about opportunities outside of UCR, the National STEM Research Fellowship Database. Anybody want to talk about that?
So that's basically a database where you can go in and either search by the location that you want to look at, the school you want to look at, the topic that you want to research, and you can find different research opportunities in the STEM sciences all across the nation. And it's a good opportunity their institution and travel and interact and network with other PIs and different schools.
The AAMC, which is the Association of American Medical Colleges, they, for our students, this can be really for anybody, but for our students that are interested in applying to MD schools, allopathic medical schools, the AAMC is in charge of that process. So they have two links or two areas where undergraduate students can look for research opportunities, or students that are graduates that have a BA or BS or pursuing a post-baccalaureate coursework or post-baccalaureate certificate, or graduate students can actually look into those opportunities. Summer undergraduate research fellowships, also known as SURF. Tony?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different summer undergraduate research fellowships. The one I'm going to talk about is from the American Physiological Society. And so I think this was almost like 2 summers ago, maybe, yeah, 2 summers ago. I did a fellowship under one of the programs that they had. Time they had 2. One of them got discontinued because of funding, and the other one changed their name to SURF. So this program is awesome. My professor in charge of the lab, my PI, actually like convinced me to apply to this. I wouldn't have done it if she didn't tell me to. And they give you a stipend. They make you conduct research over the summer, and they actually require you to present at a national meeting. And they actually pay for everything. So they pay for your flight, they pay for all the travel expenses, everything that you need, and they give you a stipend. And so this was awesome. And honestly, it was all thanks to my PI, because I honestly wouldn't have even known about this. So just keep in mind, like, all of this really doesn't matter unless you have a PI. And so that's where really all of you, if you don't have a PI yet, that's what you should, that should be your main point of focus, is finding one, and finding a really good one. Connected to that is the Traveler Summer Research Fellowship. This is super specific. This one's at the Cornell School of Medicine. And so if I was a third year again, I would definitely do this. I wish I could go back and apply to this. This is really cool. They fly you out to New York, and they like educate you on a whole bunch of like research methodology, clinical research. It's really awesome. They give you information on their medical school admissions process. And so this is definitely something to definitely look at too, Cornell School of Medicine research. But yeah, first get a PI though. That's the most important thing, obviously.
Great. Thanks, Tony. And last, I want to talk a little bit about the NIH MD, PhD, physician, medical scientist training programs. These are designed for individuals who want to pursue a medical doctor degree and also a research degree, the PhD. It's probably best to flip the letters around, even though it says MD, PhD. This person is really a PhD/MD. The goal or the role of this person is to be a lifelong scientist. MD, PhDs, the way that they are structured is that you're pursuing a medical school degree, a 4-year degree, and a research degree all in one. So it's about 7 to 8 years combined. You still have to do the 4 years of medical school, but a lot of programs are designed where you may do your first 2 years of medical school, your didactic work, and then you move into your research work, and then you go into your clinical work. Some programs have them set up where you're doing your first 3 years, your 2 years of didactic work, you're doing some clinical rotation, and then you're moving into research, and then you finish up medical school. These are very specific, school-specific programs. They are funded by the NIH. So what that means is that if you were admitted to an MD, PhD program, your tuition for the MD portion and the PhD portion is usually covered. So your tuition is covered. It's also, you're provided a stipend for living. So this is really a way to take care of the cost of your education in return for you pursuing medical school and a research, scientific research degree. These are not offered by every medical school. I'll give you an example here at UCR. Our School of Medicine offers an MD and we offer a PhD, but it's not the same as this program that's listed here. So our students at our medical school, they're either pursuing an MD, a Doctor of Medicine, or they're pursuing a PhD in biomedical sciences. Both really great avenues, but they're separate avenues. These programs that are endorsed and funded by the NIH means that you're working on both degrees simultaneously. So UCLA, Loma Linda, UCSF, they all have MD, PhD programs. We'll post the link for you so that you're able to do some research into those areas. If that's something that you're interested in, I will tell you that these programs are really competitive to get into. That doesn't mean that you can't do that, but I just share with that. We know that medical school is competitive. These are very competitive. And one of the competitive pieces of getting into these programs, we know that your coursework and GPA and your MCAT score, but they also have a high expectation that you've done undergraduate research. So that you've done some type of research. It may be research that you've done on a longitudinal scale, which means that you've done it over a couple of years. You've been in the same lab for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Maybe you've done research work after you've finished your degree at UCR. You've worked either part-time or full-time for pay in a lab. These are the types of applicants or the programs are looking for people who've done a lot of research, because as I said in the very beginning, I think the letters for me are a little bit misleading. It's more of a PhD/MD. So folks in these careers, they are a physician because they have access to patients, but they're primarily a researcher. So they're working at places like City of Hope, Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. They're doing HIV work. They're doing massive cancer, diabetes, working across the spectrum, usually at academic medical centers. So these are hospitals that have colleges attached to them, or medical schools like UCLA, UCSD, UC Davis, Stanford, Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins. So again, MD, PhD programs is something that you can look into.
And I just want to add a really quick note. A lot of people believe that getting into like an MD, PhD program will put you in a better position for a better residency program, just because of the amount of publications that you could potentially get. And so one of my friends actually, I was visiting Vanderbilt, and he did an MD, PhD program. He told me one of his biggest mistakes was thinking that he had to do an MD, PhD just to get the amount of publications necessary to get into a really competitive residency. And so he said that it doesn't matter if you get into an MD, PhD program, the research opportunities in medical school are almost limitless. And so don't make the mistake of choosing an MD, PhD or setting your path on that just for getting extra publications, because you don't need that. A lot of people do these joint programs, especially in MD, PhD, because they want to pursue research more heavily than clinical work. And so a lot of these joint degree physicians maybe spend like 30% of their time actually like doing patient interaction, but the majority of time is spent actually doing research. So that if that's if that's a lifestyle you want, of course, like this is for you. But it could be misleading from the outset.
Great, thank you, Tony. Very very important information to share as students are considering their options. So this is the point where we have about 20 minutes left. So we're two-thirds of the way through our time, and we wanted to open up this time for questions. So feel free to turn on your camera if you would like. Feel free to unmute yourself, and our panelists are here to answer any questions you have regarding research. We do have a question in the chat. How did you find your PI?
I can go first real quick. So I did the old-fashioned way. Just literally just sent out an email, and whoever took a bite, then I just joined their lab. Obviously, like 2 out of the 3 times it didn't work out well. But the third time it worked really well. Now there's like a portal. So if I had that at the time, that would have been really nice. But I don't know if it was there 2 or 3 years ago. But definitely a lot more. It was.
It was, yes.
Yeah, I didn't use it though. You could do either way, I guess. But I like sending out emails just because it's definitely more personable. What do the rest of the panelists think?
I
Yeah,
agree. I've helped a few of my friends. I got matched with my PI through the RISE program, but that's not how everyone's situations are. I recommend emailing professors across a bunch of disciplines, whatever you're interested in. You can see all the professors online on UCR's website. You can read about their research and what they do. When you email them, be direct and don't waste their time. Say exactly what you're looking for. I want to join your lab. I want to be an undergraduate researcher. Attach your resume if you feel like you should. I always recommended my friends to do that, especially if they had past research experience. And just be direct with them. And if you don't get a response back, don't take it personally. If you do get a response back, don't schedule an interview with them if you're not serious about joining their lab, because don't waste their time. That irritates them.
yeah. I wanted to just add that I agree with that. Like I said, the first lab I found was through the portal, but as I did mention previously, a lot of the opportunities on the portal are kind of limited, and you might not be that interested in them. What I did was I went to the different faculty pages, and I was able to see the research that they did, and I thought, hey, this lab looks interesting. Let me draft an email, send my resume, and see if they'll let me in. So I definitely recommend that, because that way you can definitely find a lab that you're more interested in, because research can be a lot of work. And if you're doing a research lab that you're not interested in, it's like a lot of work and it's boring also. But if you are interested in it, you'll have passion, you'll want to actually do the work, and it's a lot more enjoyable, I think.
And as a follow-up, Nick, you mentioned looking at faculty profiles. So how did you find professors, and how did you find their research interest?
Yeah, so the way I did it actually was I'm a CMDB major, so I looked up the cell molecular developmental biology tab on UCR. And if you go on like the different divisions like biology or molecular biology, they all have like a faculty tab. And if you open that, it basically lists all the faculty and has a quick little spiel of the type of research they do. And then what I found very useful was that a lot of these faculty also have a link to their lab website. And if you do that, you can get kind of like a closer look into their lab, because some of these websites will say, oh, we have a position open, or oh, we're looking for undergraduate students. So definitely go into those the different faculty pages and like departments, and looking through the faculty and finding a PI who has a lab you're interested in is a good way to find a PI.
Great, thank you.
Like I said, I got my PI from Dynamic Genome, and I think, especially during COVID, it was easy to, if you're a CNS major, go to your science class, and you can even look up the professors that like taught that class or is teaching that class, and go up to them and be like, ask if they are accepting lab assistants or need any help with their lab. But obviously during COVID, you can't go up to them after class and stuff like that. So I agree. I think looking up, the faculty's profiles, I think most faculty at UCR have publications. So obviously, most of us are not well-versed scholars that understand very dense terms, but it is still a good way to kind of get an insight of what you would be doing and what they're interested in. Also, when you're shooting an email, you can even mention what your likes and or obviously your likes, don't critique them because they're not going to like that, but your likes of their research, and it kind of shows them that you are interested, you have like a scientific background in some way. And like Summer said, you know, including your resume is key, a cover letter maybe, but yeah.
Kind of piggybacking off what Audrey just said, when you look at these research things that the PIs are doing, it's going to be very, very specific, and you're probably not going to understand a lot of it. And literature review will be the first thing that you have to do to understand the project. But don't feel intimidated by this. PIs understand that you're an undergraduate, that you're first, second, third year. They know that you're not getting a PhD or a master's degree. They know that you don't have extreme knowledge on this really specific niche interest that they have. So don't feel intimidated about that. Just make sure that the PI knows that you're open-minded, that you're willing to learn, and that's really what they're looking for, that you have a good attitude and a good work ethic. The rest, they'll teach you what you need to know in the lab. A lot of the times you'll get paired with a master's or PhD student to learn different techniques and different things in the lab. Ask them your questions and you'll learn everything that you need to know in the lab.
As a follow-up question, and I know that somebody hinted at COVID and opportunities that are available. What's going on in terms of there being this pandemic and research opportunities? Are research opportunities still available? What does that look like? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So a lot of obviously undergraduates aren't allowed in school. So a lot of the things that they're having me do, for example, is like scoring videos or working on specific graphs or like data analysis. This is going to be really tough for someone looking to get into research because it requires you to be trained in the specific programs and kind of understand what the lab is doing. So I know some professors don't mind. Some professors are even telling their current undergraduate students that they don't have to do anything, so they wouldn't really take on a new one. So it really just depends on the professor. I like to say that if you send out 10 emails to a professor wanting to join their lab, like 3 of them are going to reply and 1 of them is going to say like, okay, let's interview. Um, so that's usually how it happens, sadly. But you know, it doesn't hurt to try. Explain to them that you want to do like the dirty work, the boring work that no one else wants to do. That kind of stuff is what they really appreciate in undergrads.
And then I wanted to add also, with COVID, like we mentioned, you can't really go into these labs physically. So at least in my opinion, one way that I think is really helpful is to get versed in a coding language. Because the current work that I'm doing in my lab, I'm doing some like gene analysis, and that takes R, which is a coding language. And I really wish that I had practiced this sooner because being able to know code, and that's an important part because any type of biological research, it's based on like a lot of statistics, and you might have a lot of data. And if you know how to use a coding language, you can do a lot of statistics and analyze a lot of data really well. And I know definitely for like labs that deal with genes or like molecular stuff, you're dealing with like thousands and thousands of data points. And so if you know how to code, that's something that's really helpful, I think.
Yeah, with the online stuff, like everything that I'm doing is at home on Excel and R. So for the people in the chat that you're saying that you're freshmen, start looking now, start emailing now, because like Tony said, you're going to email a lot and get a lot of either no responses or denials. So just start emailing people now and get well versed in R and Microsoft Excel. Like learn how to use spreadsheets, learn how to manipulate data on Excel. And when you have your resume, have that be like the first 2 bullet points, that you know how to use R and you know how to use Excel, because that makes you a valuable asset to the lab. And that will really help you get a spot, especially now with COVID. And with Python, oh yeah, that's a good one too. Specifically, I've only ever used R in my lab, and I know R is like a big one in like the biosciences.
I wanna add something real quick about the people asking when they should join a lab. Um, it depends on your goals. So a lot of people think that they have to do research for medical school. There's a lot of medical schools that don't care a lick about research. For example, UCR does not care about research at all. I know a handful of people who have gone into UCR's med school and have not even stepped foot in a research lab. And then there's other schools that are like top 20, top 30 that almost expect you to do research because they're a research institution and they highly value research. So if you don't like research and you're just forcing yourself to do it just because of medical school, I would advise you to evaluate which medical schools you want to get into. Um, because it turns out that at the schools that you want to get into, you're going to have to do more research, which evidently is what some people don't like to do. Um, so definitely like realize what your goals are and then have that guide what you want to do.
Yeah, very
But
well put. Very well
But,
put.
but but for the question though, I joined my first year because I knew exactly that I wanted to do research as early as possible. So I joined like winter quarter. I don't think it's ever. Some people say wait till sophomore year. I say go in as early as possible if that is something that you want to do. If you're forcing yourself to do it because you think it's something that you have to do, then definitely not the case.
I agree. If you know that you want to do research, go in as soon as possible because your first lab might not be the best fit for you and you might end up changing labs. And also, if you're going to go to a graduate or professional school, you're going to need letters of recommendation. And the longer that you work with and know your PI and the better they get to know you and your work ethic, the better letter they can write for you. And that's really important. Like networking and just being able to have a good letter of rec from someone that trusts you and knows you well is really critical.
Question. Is it better to stay in one lab and have that continuous experience throughout your undergraduate time at UCR? Or is it better to have multiple experiences? So starting one position and maybe ending it after a quarter or 2 quarters or a year or a summer? What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely better for longevity. If the goal is medical school, longevity is the key. They don't really care about how many things you do. They care about like the how you do certain things. So if you're in a lab for 4 years, you have various grants. You might even have a publication or two. You've presented in places that looks way better than being in like 3 different labs, each for like 2 months, not really doing much in each lab. What do you, Audrey, Nicholas, and Summer? What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, especially if we move from lab to lab, those professors or PIs, they might have, different subjects that they're testing. So that's like another 2 months you have to spend learning how to manipulate those subjects or the techniques or the specific ways that that PI likes their experiments. Um, so I do think, staying in a lab and kind of, that's why you should do your research on that PI. Don't do the interview if you don't like it, um, if you can't commit to it or whatever. And, yeah, just stay there.
I think this advice can apply to pretty much everything you do in your undergrad and professional career. Stick to a few things that you enjoy and do them well. Don't hop back and forth to a bunch of different things so that you have a really long resume with a bunch of things that you only did for a couple months. Pick one thing that you enjoy, do it well, do it for a long time. Medical schools and professional schools in general, jobs, they want to see that you're able to commit to something and work through when it gets tough. There's going to be times that you want to quit your lab when you're there at like midnight and you want to go home and you don't want to be there ever again. That's going to happen. It's inevitable. And they know that and they want to see that you're able to push through that when it gets tough and continue on. So definitely just stick with it if you can.
Great. What additional questions do we have from our attendees for our panelists? So we had a question about interviews, and Tony mentioned about research. What do you like about research? Why do you want to join the lab? Tell me a little bit about yourself. What else do you have on your plate? Really important things to think about. Sometimes we don't really think about the process of our time and planning forward. So if you have, you know, a really difficult quarter or a really difficult 2 quarters or year coming up, and you are interviewing for labs and you take on something that might be 10, 15 hours a week, and on top of that, you already have a part-time job and you're involved in extracurriculars, you are probably walking down the path of self-sabotage. So I think Tony's questions are really important about just thinking ahead of your time, your availability. You don't want to start something and then have sort of this, I can't do this, I can't follow through, because then it really faults on yourself. You have to be really thoughtful about asking good questions. What does this involve? And being honest with the PI, your availability and your interest, so you don't get engaged with something that's not going to work out well.
Yeah, I will say when I was working in my lab, they did require me to have at least 3 to 5 hours per day that I would go in, that I could commit to stay in that lab to finish whatever project, because it's hard to start, like PCR takes like about 2 to 3 hours for one. And it's hard to start something and then just kind of be like, can someone else finish it for me? Because a lot of lab techniques are done by certain ways, and like it's just hard to kind of go in for like an hour or something and drop it. So if you do kind of have a lot on your plate, consider that before, doing anything. I would say, like doing volunteering, a part-time job, and yeah.
Any additional questions? We have about 3 minutes left.
Hi. So a few people said that you need to find like a really good PI. What are some of the qualities that you would look for in a PI that would match with your wanting of research?
So I had a hard time hearing you. Did you ask what kind of qualities do I look for in a PI?
Yes.
Okay. Everyone's relationship with their PI looks a little bit different. I know people that have worked in labs for 2 or 3 years and still address them by Dr. XYZ and are still very formal. In my experience, day 1 or 2, I was on a first name basis with my PI, which was really important to me. I wanted to be able to have a PI that I was comfortable with, that I didn't feel intimidated with, that was just personable. We text, have a really informal relationship, which was important to me. That's what I looked for, someone that was just pretty chill overall. That was important to me, and someone that understood that I did have other responsibilities going on and I couldn't be at their beck and call 24/7, that I had other things going on. So those were 2 things that I looked for my PI.
Yeah, personally, my PI was super nice, super kind, and I think that's important to have, because at the end of the day, they might write your letter of rec. So if you're shy, or you can't be yourself around them, you're scared to commit to tasks that they ask for, like that's not a good representation of who you are when it comes to writing your letter of rec. Versus if you are having that nice, still formal conversation with your PI, and you have a good work ethic that they see, instead of you being timid and working by yourself kind of feel, then yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So everybody, thank you for your questions. Thank you to our panelists. As a reminder, Audrey, Tony, Summer, and Nicholas are part of our HPAC Ambassador cohort this year. They all have hours. I know they're posting them in the chat as well as their email. You can also find their bios on our website as well. And so we will also post this recording to our YouTube channel, and we will make sure that you have the resources that we talked about today. So again, thank you, Audrey, Tony, Summer, and Nicholas, for your time. Thank you for everybody who attended. And best wishes on midterms, and make sure you are just staying involved. If you have questions, reach out to us, and have a great rest of the evening and fall quarter, and be safe. Thank you.